Sometimes an imposter can do a pretty convincing job. Take Anna Tchaikovsky, for instance, who pretended in the 1920s to be the missing Grand Duchess Anastasia of Russia, the only daughter of the royal family to survive the Bolshevik executions. She convinced a lot of people, including members of the Russian royal family, for a long time. But we now know from the science of DNA that Anastasia perished with her 3 sisters in the cellar where she was shot. Anna Tchaikovsky was a fake. Could Jesus have been an imposter like that, pretending to be the Messiah when he wasn't? Maybe he deliberately fulfilled the prophecies so that his claim would be accepted. Okay, maybe he couldn't have arranged to have himself born in Bethlehem, where the prophet Micah said the Messiah could come from. And he certainly couldn't have arranged to be part of the right family in the line of King David. Nor could he have arranged to be taken to Egypt as a baby. But he could have noticed that he already had those things to his credit, and then managed the rest. He could have arranged to be brought into Jerusalem on a donkey. That would have fulfilled another one. He could have taught in parables because the Old Testament said he would. He could have been deliberately provocative to his enemies because the prophet said he would be a stone that causes many to stumble, and so on. But actually, there are 3 objections to this theory. First, most of the prophecies made about the Messiah involve things that he couldn't have controlled. He couldn't have arranged for the soldiers at the cross to gamble for his clothes, or to offer him vinegar mixed with gall. It's unlikely that he could have arranged to be buried in a rich man's tomb, and surely that would have been unnecessary if he was doomed to death anyway. Why keep up the pretense? Nobody knew he was going to be pierced with a spear. That was pretty unusual at a crucifixion, instead of having his legs broken with the usual mallet. And how on earth did he arrange for a solar eclipse? No, it doesn't look as if Jesus could have faked it, unless he got extremely lucky too. Second though, why would he go through crucifixion as part of the pretense? Still today, it's one of the most cruel forms of legal execution that humans have ever come up with. Confidence tricksters have a habit of liking to stay alive. And if Jesus didn't have a sick, morbid death wish, which he doesn't seem to have had, why would he start a hoax that was going to end in torture? That doesn't seem too likely either. There's a third reason too, which is Christians used the Old Testament prophecies again and again to show that Jesus was the Messiah. They did it all the time when they were explaining their faith to Jewish people and trying to convince them. And their opponents came back with all sorts of arguments against them, but nobody in those early days ever suggested that Jesus had rigged the events of his life so that he could fulfill the prophecies. Maybe that's because Jesus taught so much about honesty and truth, and for somebody with such an unflinching record of integrity, it must have seemed incredible to people that he might be making it all up. After all, he lived an open life, with people constantly around him. He owned no property, and all he did was constantly open to inspection. If he'd been faking it, surely somebody would have spotted it sooner or later. No, if Jesus fulfilled prophecies from the past, he did it without any jiggery-pokery. He was what he was, and people could see that. For many of those who watched him and summed up the evidence, that made him the Messiah.